Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to the AI argument with myself, Justin Collery. I'm joined again by the inimitable Frank Prendergast. Frank, it's been a great week for AI.
It's been pretty good. It's been pretty good. There was a good mix of stories this week. It didn't feel horrendously bleak right from the beginning of the week like it did last week. We did a good job of finding all those fun stories last week. I feel like we've got a nice balance going on today.
Well, look at my mood. My mood has been greatly improved it's been a very quiet, relatively speaking, couple of weeks, maybe even a month or two. And suddenly the fog has lifted this week for a joy for the effective accelerationists such as myself. Claude 3.5 has been released. It is amazing. Amazing. It is brilliant. If you haven't tried it, go out and try it. I've done a number of things with it already. It is clearly better than GPT-4o, better, I think, than the benchmarks indicate. So in the benchmarks, it's scored a couple of percent higher than GPT-4o. I've got it to write interactively. I've got it to write ping pong games with my kids, and it's done it in one shot. I've got it to write code outlines for websites for me. It's done it in one shot. I've got it to take COBOL code and convert it into Java code. It's done it perfectly in one shot. And the impressive thing for me is the speed. It's super fast. I mean, the text just comes straight out. The price, it is 20% of the price of Opus, the previous highest performing model. And just the quality of the code. I mean, it's not previously when you'd be trying to develop with an AI, there'd be a lot of over and back, and you'd get errors, and you'd have to sort of give the error back, and it worked, but it was over and back. Whereas this is first time out of the box. It's perfect. And actually, Claude themselves, or Anthropic themselves, are using this code. They say that they're using it internally, and that it's totally changed the lives of their junior developers. Not that I imagine they have many junior developers, but it's totally changed the lives of their junior developers. And they ran it on an open source project where they downloaded the bugs, downloaded the code, and it fixed itself 68% of the bugs in the code from the open source repo. Amazing. I mean, amazing. This is definitely a step up from where we are before. And what gives me such joy about this is that it throws the ball back into OpenAI's court. OpenAI, the great thing, did you see how they released it?
No.
They
How do you mean?
released it not with a press release, not with we're going to show this to you in 6 months, not with a sort of a flashy demo. They had a coded message with Morse code put out on Twitter. That was the release. What a beautiful way to release the best model that anybody has ever seen. That's the way to release product.
When you say it's better than 4.0, do you mean specifically for coding? Or are you thinking that this is actually better than, because what's amazing is that Claude Sonnet 3.5 is available to free users of Claude. Like, you don't even have to have a paid account. You can just hop on and you can try it out. You'll get a limited amount of messages, but I just hopped on and I tried it out for free. So when you say it's better than 4.0, do you mean, are you thinking maybe across the board, or are you thinking specifically coding?
Well, I'll tell you next week, because this weekend I have a legal use case that I like to use in the background myself, and I'm going to use it on the legal use case. So that's not a coding example. But everything I've seen online from people who use it for different use cases, they've brought in this brilliant feature, which is called artifacts. So artifacts are just amazing. It's a beautiful design pattern where normally when you were writing, in this instance, code, right, the code would appear in the chat window, and it makes your window quite busy and it's hard to see what you're doing. So in this paradigm, you've got your conversation going on and the code appears in a separate bar on the right-hand side. And then you can run the code, which is just beautiful, right? It's a really, really nice interface. But I believe that you can also use it for drawing pictures. You can also use it for writing documents. You can also, so there's lots of different use cases. I really, really like that design and that look and feel.
It's really nice. I mean, I played around with it. I'm not a coder, but I did used to do a bit of web design. So what I did was I asked it to create for me a HTML5 animation of a robot walking across the screen using SVG graphics. And it did it. Now, I also asked it, because it crashed. It crashed my browser because the robot was walking across my screen endlessly, and it just crashed the browser. So I said, look, maybe make the robot walk across once, and then have a button appear saying play again. And it did it, but the play again button didn't work. And I said, well, play again button doesn't actually work. Can you fix it? And it said, oh, I'm sorry about that, and went off and it recoded it. Still didn't work. But I said, okay, can you analyze why this isn't working? And don't recode it. Just analyze why it's not working. And it gave me the analysis. I didn't understand it because I hadn't a clue how it was coded. And then at the end, it said, do you want me to implement this analysis? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Sure enough, worked perfectly. And it's the artifacts thing is great that you can just literally, you're typing away with Claude, and on the right-hand panel, you're checking out your robot walking across the screen. It's fabulous.
It's brilliant. And I would note, right, as well, I've seen a couple of examples where people have got it to do, they were getting it to do icons. So let's say your robot, I'm sure, was quite blocky and basic.
Very,
right?
very.
But if you tell it, okay, can you make the robot a little bit more realistic? Can you make it more like a knight from 1800s? And you give it, just prompt it to give it sort of a steer as to what you want it to look like. You end up actually with very realistic and very good results. So, it's giving you a basic outline at the start.
I did ask Midjourney to create me a little vector logo of a robot with black glasses and a mustache. And I gave that to Claude Sonnet 3.5. And I said, could you turn this into an SVG for me? And it created something really blocky. And I did try and push it. I said, look, that's not great now. Could you add some of the detail that's in the original? And it said, oh, I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, let me do that. And then it came back with something even blockier, to be honest. And I said, like, where's the shading? And it said, oh, I'm really sorry. Yeah, no, I can't do it faithfully. I can do a very basic representation for you. That's about it. So so I wasn't able to push it to something that was truly impressive. But the fact that it could do it at all was truly impressive.
I did a test on it, which could be really interesting. So what I did was I took a screenshot of Microsoft Word, and then I gave the screenshot to, this is a test I've done with a number of models, and then I gave the screenshot to Claude, and I said, can you give me the coordinates, please, for the insert button? And models normally do terrible at this. Figuring out coordinates on a screen, they just don't work at all. It didn't get it perfect, but it got it really, really close. And I'm quite sure if I put a box around where it guessed where it was, and I fed that back in again and said, okay, this was your guess. Is this right? Or update your guess. It would probably get it right. And if you're looking at agentic workflows and you want the AI to maybe drive a website or to interact with an application or something like that, that's been one huge blocker. It's been really difficult to do that. And my initial test told me that Claude 3.5 actually did a much better job on that. So that'll be something else I want to test. My eyes by Monday, Frank, will be red and bloodshot. Me up till 4 o'clock in the morning, seeing what this thing can do. But first impressions are, wow, brilliant.
Yeah,
I love it. Definitely a step forward. And this, remember, is
everyone should just go and play with it because it's available there free. So
for free,
everyone should check it out.
I mean, what a world, what a time to be alive, right? Where the most incredible AI that's ever been created is free, and you can go and play with it. Isn't that brilliant? And
it is.
It's Sonnet. It's not even the biggest model. So they've told us that by the end of the year, they're going to have 3.5 Opus, which is going to be more powerful. I mean, there's quite a big gap in 3 between Sonnet and Opus. So that's just going to be incredible. I mean, what a time to be alive, Frank. It's great.
Yeah. I for once, I agree with you. Absolutely. Yes. So you drew my attention to a mad story. And I think this is fascinating for loads of reasons, actually. But a filmmaker wrote a screenplay entirely with ChatGPT, and he was due to have a screening in London. And I think the film was called The Last Screenwriter. Was that the title? Something very similar to that, anyway.
Yes,
so
I think
it's
so.
Kind of a weird. It was kind of a weird Inception type thing. We're 3 levels deep here, where the film was about a screenwriter who's being replaced by an AI. But the screening was cancelled. They got a load of complaints, and it was a private hire. But they got so many complaints when they put on their social media that this film was being screened as a private hire that they contacted the filmmaker and said, sorry, we're not going ahead with it. What did you make of all that?
I think it's incredible. One, that the why did they cancel the screening? I mean, so what that they got a load of complaints? That's brilliant. I mean, down with this sort of thing. They'll get an even bigger audience. It's fantastic. What was that movie years ago in the west of Ireland? The bishop sort of forced the screening of it to be cancelled. I don't think it was the Passion of the Christ. It was some
Oh,
other thing.
yeah.
Anyway, and I think there might be more of this, like in future, where I can see a schism between, different people who just say, "Oh no, I would never go to see an AI generated movie. I'd never do this." Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's brilliant. I think it's art worthy too. Do you not agree? Like, I mean, it's
Well, I mean, I totally agree. I do not understand why it was cancelled. Now, the filmmaker himself said by the time they pulled it, he was actually glad because he didn't want a cinema full of people booing his film. He didn't want it full of protesters. But his point was, this is a conversation piece, and it's a conversation we need to be having. And the film, not only was it a conversation piece by having a film that was generated by AI, the script written by AI, I should say. It was filmed with like traditional actors and traditional film crew and everything.
only a matter of
But
time,
not
Frank.
only, yeah, absolutely, yeah, we should talk about that in a moment. But
Yeah.
but like the film itself was posing these questions, so it would have been a great conversation starter. And I mean, it struck me that like even the Hollywood writer strike and the agreements that were reached there, they never they didn't get to a point where they were like, AI cannot be used. So the studios can use AI for script writing if they want. They
Hmm.
In America, they won't be able to copyright it if they do, which would be a huge issue to their profits, I would assume.
Yep.
But even there, even in those like high level negotiations with the unions and the studios, the studios can still use AI. So there's nothing stopping somebody from using AI to write their script. Why not let this person screen their film, and why not let people go and see, well, is it any good? And I watched the trailer, and I thought the dialogue in the trailer was like, it wasn't sparkling dialogue. I wasn't going, oh, I definitely want to see this film. It's on my must-watch list. However,
Yeah.
I would say it was a better trailer and it was better dialogue in the trailer than a lot of the stuff I've been watching recently on Netflix.
I know some of the rubbish that I've watched too, and this because you use AI. That the prompt that you give it and how you frame it and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of variables, so you can imagine just by saying it's an AI generated script, the variation in the quality of that script is still enormous. And and I think it's kind of funny that he says, I didn't want a theater full of booing protesters. I don't know that they'd pay money to go in and see it. The people inside are going to be up for it. It's the protesters will be outside. And is that not the purpose of art in many ways, is to spark such a discussion? And in a way, he's succeeded. We're talking about it. So, I mean, it's worked to that extent.
Very true, very true. And I think he's thinking now about if he can't, I think he's going to hold a cast and crew screening, and then he's going to put it out on the internet, which it was always his intention anyway, was to make it freely available. Along with, once he's had his own screening and once it goes out online, he's going to make all of the prompts and all of the documentation of how he did it available. He's already been very transparent about it, so I was really interested to read his process, because I'll be honest, when I watched that trailer, I was like, I don't know, I think he might just be making this up for the press.
yeah.
But when I read his documentation of the process, I was like, okay, no, that sounds like he might have actually done this and got it right. And I was curious about things like, how did he manage to get around the context window for an entire feature-length film? But it sounds like by taking a very step-by-step approach with it, that it would have been possible. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to when he does release the full process. I'm definitely going to watch it, because I really want to know, like, does it stand up? Does it flow from scene to scene? Because he said he didn't change a word of dialogue. He
Wow.
edited, he curated, but he did not edit or change a word that was actually written.
Fascinating. And I mean, I think it's only a matter of time before you get a full movie totally created with AI. So, I mean, you've played extensively with Midjourney and with Sora and whatever, all these different tools. And there is, I mean, you talk about the studios, right? And it's going to be bad for the studios' bottom line. But I mean, I read something this week that said that in the very near future, for $10,000, you can be able to create a movie, a feature length movie. And I know that we talked about this. It's interesting, in fact, now that I think about it, we talked about this 6 months ago, back just after Christmas. and I can't remember what was the product that came out, but we had said, look, if you look at the progression, you had 5-second videos, 60-second videos. By this time, 18 months, you should be able to have feature-length movies made entirely by AI, and this is another step just towards. You can see that the progress of the technology isn't slowing down, and we will have an AI-generated movie.
And it's interesting, you said a minute ago that kind of Anthropic had kind of thrown the gauntlet down to OpenAI. And, in the video arena, there's something similar happening, because last week we talked about Luma's Dream Machine, which is AI video. There's a Chinese company, I think they have a product called Kling, which is very similar. I haven't tried it because you have to have a Chinese phone number or email address or something. But again, very impressive video. Runway have just announced that their third generation is on the way, and it's going to be amazing. And they've shown some incredible clips from it. Meanwhile, Sora was announced back in February, and there's still no sign of it. And at the time, I think it was in like March or maybe April, they were asked and they said, oh, well, we're still red teaming it because there's still major concerns around deepfakes and security and stuff like that. So is that still the holdup? Is it still maybe a consideration that there's a US election coming up and they're still concerned about deepfakes from that perspective? But the rest of the companies now are pulling what OpenAI did with ChatGPT when they launched ChatGPT and forced everybody to suddenly come out into the open with what they were doing in the background with AI. It feels now like a lot of companies are forcing OpenAI's hand, and like either they're going to have to release Sora or they're going to be really far behind. And is that good for the world or not? Because, should we be storming ahead with all of these video creators that you can create anything you like?
We'll go there, right? In 1 second, we'll go there, right? But the OpenAI, you're totally right, have to release something, right? And if you look at, because if they don't release something soon, then doubts start to creep into people's minds. And it's very easy to switch from one model to another, right? So I can just change an API call and I'm talking to Sonnet 3.5 instead of OpenAI. And a couple of things happened recently that make me think they do have something, but they have to release something soon. So a former head of the NSA, I can't remember the name of the gentleman, but he was appointed to the board of OpenAI about a week and a half ago. And the CTO of OpenAI was interviewed yesterday or the day before, and she said that they gave the government the American government sight of their models before they released them to the public. And I don't know that either of those things are true of any of these other companies. So they're just, cooking, doing what they're doing and releasing models. And is it that OpenAI have a really good model and they're just being held back by, regulatory concerns, not internally perhaps by themselves, but by maybe government agencies saying, look, you can't release this. And of course, remember, Larry Summers is also on the board, who used to be the head of the Fed. So you've got some very powerful government figures involved in the board of OpenAI. And I just wonder, is that what's slowing them down? Because certainly the pace of their releases, they've announced a lot of stuff, but they haven't released anything. So anyway, brings me on to my favorite subject, Frank.
Yes. Which is?
Well, if you were working in one of the big AI labs and you were concerned about safety, what would you do, Frank? Would you stay there and argue internally in the AI lab to make sure that this incredibly dangerous model was kept under wraps and kept safe, or would you create a million splinters and have 50 different companies all creating AIs and all releasing them as quickly as they can, creating commercial pressure so that actually the development of AI goes forwards faster without any safety controls at all?
So, can we talk about Ilya's Sutskever's new company then?
Yes, Frank, you correctly guessed where I'm going with this one.
So his new company is called Safe Superintelligence Incorporated, I think.
Correct.
SSI. And I'm rooting for him. 100%, I'm rooting for him. We talked on a recent episode about how I was saying, if you compare Mustafa Suleiman to Sam Altman, Mustafa Suleiman has very clear values, and you can kind of go, yeah, I get what he stands for. Sam Altman, I don't have that sense really. He's kind of all over the map. But Ilya Sutskever is someone who I feel like, yes, it's very clear what his values are. Certainly, you know, he hasn't been like a major person in the spotlight, but anything we've seen of him, he's always been about safety and alignment. And it always has appeared as if that's the agenda he was pushing in OpenAI, that he was very committed to the original OpenAI vision and the mission statement that they have, which is safe AGI for humanity. But he has left OpenAI because obviously he wasn't happy about what was going on. And he's created his own company that he says will, I can't remember the exact quote, but he basically infers that they will not bow to commercial pressures and they will not be on a, you know, product rollout cycle that they have to commit to. I am rooting for him.
Good luck with that.
I know. Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? I'm like, please let it be that he learned so much from his OpenAI experience that he has figured out a path forward because he's a really smart guy. Please do not let it be that, you know, his values are just too naive for the corporate capitalist system that we exist in.
Frank, you're in the artistic world and you're in the storytelling and story writing world. Does this story not write itself?
I'm hoping for that. I'm hoping for a twist. I'm hoping for a twist where we all get the pleasant surprise and we live happily ever after because Ilya Sutskever saves the world.
It'll be really hard for Ilya to. I mean, I wish him all the best. The guy is brilliant. He's a genius. But to do what he wants to do without ever releasing product is an incredibly big, tall order. It's very hard. How do you know? Right, I write software and I release software. You do your best, but you never truly know until you actually release it to, you know, there's a joke in the software industry. As soon as you create idiot-proof software, God creates a more capable idiot, right? You don't know until you release the thing what people will do with it. It's incredibly hard. And seems to me like it's like technical perfection, it's utopia. And I hope it isn't. I hope he does well. I tell you what was very interesting in the press release, or it wasn't even a press release. They've got like a one-page website, and it was artificial general intelligence is near. That was one of the lines in it, and it's not. He's not going for safe artificial general intelligence. He's going for safe artificial superintelligence. So that tells me that in Ilya's mind, the AGI problem is solved already, and now he's moved on to ASI. I mean, that's a big statement right there. So that's an interesting one. We'll see how it goes. I wish him all the best. It's a shame he's not going to release product because I'd love to play with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not clear that he won't release product, but he says he's not going to get caught up in that like cycle of pressure from investors to release. But we'll see.
There was an interesting
comment.
Go on.
I was just going to say we actually have a comment in there from Gavin Collery. Any relation?
Yes, nothing. Yes.
He says his AI movie's making not just an extension of NVIDIA gaming capabilities, such as the power of their hardware. And I just thought that might be an interesting one to throw over to you because I know you have opinions on NVIDIA.
Yes. Well, Gavin was lucky because Gavin got the brains of the family, and so lucky there. But there's two things about that, right? First off, there was I think it was the head of Anderson Horowitz, the big investment firm, and he said that he believed the future of gaming was actually movies that are tailored for yourself. He had an interview this week where he said that, and so he saw that, you know, that is essentially an AI generated movie that's actually a game, and you play the game and you're interactive within the movie. So I do think that that's the future of, you know, movies and gaming coming together. Now, the other thing that you've alluded to that we talked about before we came on air was that NVIDIA this week became the most valuable company on the planet. And obviously, I'm not in my big mansion, and this is not investment advice, but NVIDIA became more valuable than the economies of either the UK or France. And that to me is totally unsustainable. And in financial terms, I think what we're doing is we're going through a cycle exactly as we did in the dot-com boom and the dot-com bust that happens afterwards. And NVIDIA to me is the Cisco of the 2000s. And what's happening at the moment is money is being thrown at everything because nobody knows it's brand new. Nobody knows what the best way is to harness this technology or to get the best out of it. Like, we're just after talking about Anthropic and these artifacts and going, wow, that's brilliant. So new designs and new patterns will emerge. And until you know what they are, companies will just throw money at everything. And out of every 100 companies, inevitably, 95 of them are going to fail. And that's the crash part of the cycle. And then you're going to end up with 5 really valuable companies. So Cisco, during the dot-com crash, their value fell by 90%. And I'm quite sure that NVIDIA's value at some point will also fall by 90%. And there will be people at that point that will go, oh, there you go. That was it. The AI was all hype and, it wasn't really real. It was real. That's just the technology cycle. That's what it does. And so I look at this, how you can tell this, by the way, is about 6 months before the dot-com crash, there are stories started to appear in press that said inventory of Cisco routers was increasing. And that just told you that they couldn't shift the routers fast enough. That's what happened. And I think at the moment, you've got everybody is looking for NVIDIA chips. So, and that, I mean, it could go on. I mean, it could go on for another year. It could go on for 2 years, 3 years. You just don't know, right? But at the moment, you've got AWS, you've got Apple, you've got Microsoft, you've got Anthropic, you've got OpenAI, you've got Elon Musk, you've got everybody, plus all of these third-party cloud providers who provide compute for people who want to run open source models, and they're all desperate to get their hands on NVIDIA equipment. And at some point, the market will become saturated, but that push of supply will still just carry on. And that's how you know. So you'll be forewarned, right? You'll know a month or 2 or 3 months beforehand when you start to see that it's really cheap to buy NVIDIA stock, or, as in stock as in physical pieces of equipment, or you'll see stories about inventory, or a couple of cloud providers are going bust and can't sell their equipment. If you see that, the price is going to go south really quickly afterwards. That's not investment advice, though, Frank.
Yeah.
Buy Anthropic.
Too late. I was down here buying. I was down here selling all my shares. So yeah, we're almost at the end, but we got through about half of what we were going to chat about. But let's talk about First Horizon Bank.
No, I'm gonna overrule you just on this one. Okay, let's do the First Horizon Bank, and then I'm going to end on a different story. So First Horizon Bank, what happened there, Frank?
So First Horizon Bank are monitoring their call center workers, and when they're using AI to basically do kind of like, I suppose, sentiment analysis. And when they are super frustrated, on the brink of freaking out, their monitors will be taken over with a slideshow of their family and their loved ones and their favorite song, which will fix everything, of course.
Is this not a Black Mirror episode? I mean, it's unbelievable. To me, it's totally dystopian future. When I saw this story, there was one word in my mind, and that was grim. Grim, grim, grim. It's the heart of the hardest problem.
It's very Black Mirror, and in fact, the article that I read about it likened it not to Black Mirror, but to the Apple TV show Severance. And they said it was like the egg bar social in Severance, which is where when someone completes their quota of work, they get rewarded with this ridiculous trolley that's wheeled in. It's a little snack bar, and music plays, and lights flash. It's bizarre. I mean,
Frank, the thing is, I read these stories, right? And to me, AI is a hammer and every problem is a nail. And I'm just going, why are people answering the phones? Like, if a job like this is that detrimental to your mental health, just get an AI to do the job. And,
or also, like, why isn't it something meaningful? Why isn't it like you get a 15-minute break? Why is it a slideshow and a piece of music?
God help the person that's going through a divorce.
I mean, if you were frustrated at work and you were trying to do stuff, and suddenly your screen was taken over with a slideshow and a song, like, what would your reaction be? Because I think my reaction would be to pick up the screen and throw it out the window.
imagine, right, you were driven to work by your 18-year-old kid. They crashed the car on the way to work. You go into work, you have a really bad call, and the first picture on your screen is your 18-year-old kid sitting beside the car. And you're just like, no, I can't take this anymore. I'm mad. I'm mad as hell. This is Network. This is that movie from the 70s.
We've gone through the Black Mirror. That's what's happened. We've gone through the Black Mirror.
There is hope, Frank. I have one last story for you that is close to my heart, and that I saw this week, and it's from an attorney called Adam Uwinski, and what he did was he got Supreme Court cases from the US and he fed them into AI, and he got AI to adjudicate the cases, and the AI was better at adjudicating the cases and interpreting the legal texts than real judges were. What a time. This is brilliant. In AI, we trust. Absolutely. Can't come fast enough. I say put AI in charge of the courts.
And this is something that you've said since we've started this show.
And I'm not alone. That's what makes me so happy.
It was a fascinating article. And, you know, if it hadn't been from an attorney, I might have questioned it. But, you know, the fact that it was from an attorney and that he really put it through its paces, he really interrogated the responses to make sure that it wasn't, you know, a coin toss. And, you know, he showed that, yeah, it when he gave it the cases, but not the outcomes, it came to the same ruling in 5 out of 6 of the cases. And in that last case that it didn't agree with the Supreme Court ruling, that case had been split like 5-4, I think, or I don't know what the numbers are. I think it was 5-4. And so his point was, like, you could hardly call that wrong, because it was almost evenly split anyway. Absolutely fascinating.
And to my general sort of worldview about AI was that he used GPT-4 when he was doing his tests. And this week, when Anthropic released their new model, Sonnet 3.5, they actually released a metric which showed legal reasoning. And GPT-4 was at about, I think it was 75 or 80%. Sonnet was just over 90%. So if he was to repeat the test again with 3.5, he'd get even better results. And again, I'd say this is the middle model. Opus is going to be released, they've said, around Christmas time, so you'll get better results again. So, I mean, I say it sort of, you know, humorously that we should do it, but I do think there'll come a time in future, you know, where maybe I could imagine that it would start for, let's say, you know, sort of lower order cases down the district court or something like that. And you could just elect, like, you could pay a lot of money to a lawyer and a solicitor and you can go there, or you could just elect to have it sorted out by an AI. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
What about you, Frank?
I liked the tempered and measured approach of the author of that blog post, where he was saying, look, let's not just yet get into the realm of, you know, could we replace Supreme Court justices with AI? But he was making the point that, you know, you could very much speed up analysis and, you know, from the Supreme Court justices' underlings, whose titles I've completely forgotten. They have special legally titles that I can't remember. But he was pointing out that their jobs could be made much easier, because the AIs are clearly more than capable of doing this analysis.
His livelihood, Frank, just to point this out, his livelihood depends on those same Supreme Court judges ruling in his favor. So he's very unlikely to say that they should be replaced by AI.
Good point. Good point. Brilliant. Excellent chatting to you as always.
As always, Frank, pleasure.
I'll see you next week to argue over more roles that we should or should not be replacing with AI.
Looking forward to it, Frank. Talk to you next Friday.